Opening up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag on this Wednesday episode and taking a look at the undefeated teams, 6 of those, and the winless teams. There are 7. We will rank the 2-0 teams and the 0-2, plus a couple of 0-1-1 teams in the NFL after 2 weeks, coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. LinkedIn Jobs sponsoring today's show. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. And by the way, hello to everybody, all the new viewers on all of the streaming platforms. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube to the Locked On NFL channel. That is where you can find Peacock and Williamson, and of course all the other great shows here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and a lot of familiar folks tweeting at us. We've got some questions from Twitter at the end of today's show. But first, Matt, let's take a look at now, after 2 weeks of the NFL season, we got some teams that are doing pretty well, got some teams that are not doing so hot, not off to a great start. A lot of teams in the middle. We're going to skip those teams in the middle. If you have a win and a loss, we're not talking about you today. We're talking about the winless and the undefeated teams in the NFL. And let's rank those teams, Matt, starting with the 2-0, the 6 franchises that started out 2-0 so far this season.
Yeah, I thought this would be kind of a fun exercise. Let's rank them, how much we trust them to maintain this pace. There are 6 of them that are 2-0. They are Tampa, the Giants, the Eagles, Buffalo, Miami, who square off against each other this week, and Kansas City. So who are we most confident that will maintain this pace? I'm not saying they're going to be 17-0, but they're going to maintain what they're doing in terms of wins and loss. I think Buffalo has to be 1.
They're 1. They started out 1 this year. They've just torn apart 2 opponents. They look scary on offense and defense. Buffalo Bills, easy number 1.
Okay. We agree on that. I have Kansas City 2.
Yes. Yeah. Kansas City's got to be 2. There was just a little bit of trepidation going into the season. No Tyreek Hill. What's it going to look like? Right. Obviously, Pat Mahomes, one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the NFL. Andy Reid. They've got pieces on both sides of the ball. Good offensive line. I like that they're running the ball. Maybe a little bit of a new look, but still just as scary of a football team, and off to a nice 2-0 start. And really any worries I had about the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe, entering a little bit of a new era under Patrick Mahomes. No worries at all anymore. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to be there in the end, clearly, and have an opportunity to be maybe the team that lasts the longest without losing a game.
Yeah. I feel like they are undefeated while figuring it out, which is a wonderful place to be. Yes. There's a lot of teams that are trying to figure out, what are we in 2022? I'm not sure the Chiefs 100% know, but in the meantime, they don't have any losses, and they have a blowout victory as well as a huge win in the division over the Chargers. So they're really in good shape, and I absolutely trust coaching staff and quarterback to no end.
This is where it starts to get a little bit more difficult, but I think we might agree on number 3 being the Philadelphia Eagles, just because of how good they've looked 2 weeks in a row. I put Philadelphia over Tampa, Miami, and Buffalo here. How do you have number 3?
I also have the Eagles. I thought you might go Tampa. I'm a little worried about Tampa. We'll get to them in a minute. I really like where the Eagles are at. I think I said this yesterday. It was after the Monday Nighter. I regret not picking them as my Super Bowl champ. I was simply a coward. I think they're really good on both sides of the ball. Hurts has made progress. We did a Locked On Dynasty that'll air today, and we were talking about who's the number 3 receiver in the Dynasty world. Jefferson and Chase are way above everybody else. Right now, Kupp is going 3, but I even said, I think I'd take A.J. Brown. I mean, the usage, the future he has in front of him still, I think I would take him over any receiver for fantasy, with the exception of those top 2, Chase and Jefferson.
That's
there's so many. This is a really hard conversation. I didn't plan on throwing into the bus. I mean,
I don't know if the
Waddle
volume is
and
going to
Cup
be there.
and
Right.
Adams and Tyreek, and there's tons of them.
There's tons of them, and I still know about the volume, but that's kind of what I like about the Eagles right now. You don't have to have one guy that feeds everything. You've got a quarterback that's making plays with his legs. He's getting better and better as a passer, and he's got all the weapons to help him out. And look, we've seen if you're an NFL franchise, a GM, a head coach, and you're starting things over, like if you're the Chicago Bears, for example, you think you've got your quarterback. You've seen it with the Bills now. We're seeing it with the Eagles. Go get that quarterback some weapons. Like spend all of your $100 million right on offensive line and wide receivers if you're the Bears this offseason. Like go help them out. You've seen how important it is, and we're seeing it now in year 3 with Tua. We're seeing now in year 3 with Jalen Hurts. Both those quarterbacks currently undefeated.
Yeah, go trade for Stephon Diggs or Tyreek Hill or Adams. I mean, Adams is different because his quarterback didn't need to help as much. But yeah, it's a great point, and the Bears are a perfect example. Go get them.
So Philly 3, I put the Miami Dolphins 4, Matt, over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Dolphins for me this year are what the Philadelphia Eagles were for you, and I'm mad at myself for not picking them a little bit higher. I had the Philadelphia Eagles as a wild card and the Miami Dolphins as a wild card. Now the Dolphins have to do business with the Buffalo Bills in the division, so they would still be in that wild card scenario. I'm all in on the Philadelphia Eagles as the NFC East champs without Dak and Dallas, and even with another 2-0 team right now in the New York Giants in the East. But I love what I'm seeing from the Miami Dolphins. We already knew they could play defense, and they haven't changed the scheme much there, but the offense is just dynamic. 6 touchdowns for Tua, a really smart person in Mike McDaniel running the offensive side of things now, and all of that speed. That's a scary team to play right now, and maybe they'll come back down to earth and teams will start to figure them out. But right now, I would not want to walk in and play the Miami Dolphins.
I had no hesitation putting the Eagles 3. 4 versus 5 here. Tampa and Miami is really hard for me. So I guess it depends on what's the question being asked. I mean, if they played today, I would pick Miami. I think they're the better team right this minute. But I think I phrased it of who are you most confident in, and I just have to say Brady. I mean, Brady versus Tua to me, I understand the 6 touchdowns. He's looking great, all those things. But their stratospheres away at this point. There's a lot of bad things going on with Tampa, though. I mean, 3rd offensive tackle, rebuild offensive line. They're so Fournette heavy now on offense because of the receiver and O-line issues. Brady's getting the ball out remarkably quick. Is Evans going to be suspended? It sure looks like it. Godwin, Julio, who's playing, who isn't? But confidence, I will put the Bucs over Miami. And I think you have to note that I think Tampa's probably had the best defense in the league thus far.
Yes, their defense is good. You have Tom Brady, so the other stuff they'll get figured out, hopefully, and be a healthier team in Week 15 than they are in Week 3. So, yeah, that's a good point. Tomorrow, if they play Miami Dolphins, second half of the season, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I would buy that argument if you would say that they're going to be the better team. So, more of a projection with Tampa to see where they end up. But, man, there's some questions there. So that means and you have
the
Tampa.
Giants are a distant last, of course.
So for this, I mean, you can make up your own rules, but did you take Miami or Tampa? Did you take Miami or Tampa, Matt?
I took Tampa because the way I phrased it was who you're most confident in. Okay. However, if you guys remember in the preseason, I said over and over that I thought either the Rams, Packers, or Bucs, one of them is going to fall apart this year to some degree and come back and not be a contender. And maybe it's all 3. But it looks like the Bucs could be that team just in terms of luck and age and suspensions and injuries. And,
the Buccaneers are already teetering. Like we saw with the Baltimore Ravens last year. One more big injury.
Right.
You start losing some football games if you're Tampa, especially if it's Brady or maybe you start losing someone really important on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. And right before we did this, I went and just checked turnover differential. They're +4. They're at the top of the league. Actually, Jacksonville's top +5. They're number 1. And it just made me think, I'm sure Brady won't turn the ball over, but they're reliant on defense and turnovers right now to be 2-0. That's not as stable as relying on Mahomes and Reed and Allen and, all those, those type of things. What if they have 2 defensive injuries and it goes from the number 1 or 2 defense to 10? Then, they are fragile.
New York Giants coming in 6 out of the 2-0
Sure.
teams here. Probably not much of a surprise. They only have a +4 point differential on the season, so they've only won their 2 games by a total of 4 points. To put that into perspective, a team like the Atlanta Falcons, who's played a couple of close games against teams that everyone thought they were better, that was better than them coming into the year, they only have a -5 point differential. So to be honest with you, the Falcons, who most people think are one of the worst teams in the league, and the New York Giants, there's not a huge difference there. And if they played 100 times, it might be 48 and 52. But I do like, again, with both of those franchises, I think you feel good about how they're playing and how they're competing, even if they're not quite ready to be that team. I think more talent on the New York Giants than the Atlanta Falcons, which is the difference in the 2-0 versus the 0-2. And Brian Dable, I think you have to be really excited about that hire if you're the Giants. So, that's good news. Are they going to remain undefeated for a while? Probably not.
Yeah, and it's funny because I threw out, hey, we're probably going to do Twitter Tuesday on Wednesday. And we got a great question, and might we have to bump that to like the first segment next week about all these really bad teams are playing good. What do you think about that? And the Giants in Atlanta, like you just said, are a great example. I love that question. I don't know if we have enough time to give that the proper attention today, but that's a really good conversation to me. I have some thoughts.
I can give you the short answer, and that's that they hired new coaches that might have been good hires. So
I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, raising the floor a little bit with that is a big part of it. But yeah, maybe we'll have to dive into that one a little bit further on another episode. Next, the winless teams in the NFL. Will rank those 7 teams in 2022 and hit some more of your Twitter questions on this Wednesday mailbag episode of Peacock and Williamson. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. All you got to do is create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond of the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. I'm on LinkedIn. Matt's on LinkedIn. Everyone you know is on LinkedIn, right? Why not utilize that platform to find the right folks to hire? All you do is add the job to your purple hiring frame on your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and eventually hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Taking a look, Matt, at these 0-2 teams and a couple of 0-1 teams, how do you rank these 7? And I want to start with the 2 teams that are 0-1 because the Indianapolis Colts are a team that we didn't expect to be here. The Houston Texans are a team that we probably did expect to be here. And right now, if I had to bet on these 2 teams to play each other, I think that 0-1 record spells it out. Like I don't know if the Colts are good or the Texans are bad and the Colts are bad. Like I don't know what to think about some of these teams on the 0-2 bracket. Some of them, like the Bengals, I know are going to turn it around. Some of the others, it's hard to see.
Yeah, I think the Jags are the best team in the AFC South. And that might be all you need to know about the other 3.
They are the only team with a plus
aren't on this list
point differential. They have a plus 18. All the other teams in the division are on the negative side of points. They completely shut out the Colts, who we both picked to win the AFC South. The Jaguars haven't played great either. Even the game they won 24-0, I wasn't super impressed by it.
Blow your doors off.
This is one of those who wants to win the division? I'm not sure if any of them do.
So let's phrase this one this way. What are you most confident that they will turn things around or get out of this? I think Cincy has to be one, right?
Oh, it's the Bengals. It's the Bengals. They've played so bad. They're not that bad of a team, and maybe they're not the AFC representative in the Super Bowl this year. Maybe it all came together just right for them. And look, they weren't like the 1 seed going into the playoffs either, but they had a nice little run, and that happens. And maybe a little Super Bowl loss hangover, which tends to happen for whatever reason. I'm not sure what it is, but they're too talented to have played as bad as they've played so far, and especially on the offensive side of the ball. 37 points in 2 games. They're gonna start putting some points up on the board.
Yeah, I expect Burrow to get back to being a Pro Bowl type quarterback. I have a lot of questions about this coaching staff, and I do think the lack of work in the preseason has hurt this team as much as any. And everyone's worried about the rebuild O-line. I get that. Burrow's a sack guy. I mean, he holds the ball too long. And you don't play Micah Parsons and TJ Watt every week,
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, that is a very good point. Looking at the Titans and the Colts.
Real close. Since he's also -4 in turnover differential, like they'll get close to 0 and, even things out a little bit.
Ball bounced their way. A couple of close games. They're only -6 in point differential too. So a lot of actually close losses for these teams over the course of the first few weeks of the season. I talked about how the Bengals have only scored 37 points. How about the Titans only 27 and the Colts only 20? But at least 20 of those came in one game for the Colts. So big questions on offense with both of those teams. Derrick Henry, is he done? Was that the end of it last year when he got hurt? And now it's old Derrick Henry and he's not going to be that guy anymore. And with the Colts, there's just not a lot of weapons. Maybe they upgraded a quarterback. They have a more trustworthy leader at quarterback in Matt Ryan. But who's he going to get the ball to aside from Jonathan Taylor? That's it.
Yeah. And again, I think turnover differential is big when you're looking at 2-game samples like this as well. Colts are -4. Titans are -3. Neither one of those is my second team, though, that I'm picking to turn things around. I think the Raiders are better than those guys in terms of ability to get back on track. I mean, that Arizona loss could have they're very close to not even being on this list.
What's funny is I can buy that argument that the Raiders maybe are a better team if there was a 3-team tournament between the Raiders, the Colts, and the Titans. But I would by far put the Titans and Colts ahead of the Raiders in a team that's going to make the playoffs this year.
Without question.
Yeah.
I mean,
because their path
different
is
question.
and it's harder for them to win games. So record-wise, I don't know if it'll show out, but I wouldn't argue with you if you put the Raiders ahead. I don't know if I would necessarily put them clearly ahead. I think those 3 teams are all so similar, and I'm not super high on any of them right now.
No, I'm not either. They're in bad places right now, especially the Colts and the Titans, which I kind of saw coming on the Titans. That's looking as bad or worse than I expected. They're another one that I just don't like how they're built. I mean, I think that they're old and very Henry reliant, and what do you run for 20 yards or something? They can't play from behind. The Matt Ryan experience is not looking good so far in Indy, but they didn't have Pittman and really were short on weapons. They always get beat in Jacksonville for whatever reason. They need to get like Leonard back. So I rank them Bengals, Raiders, Colts, Titans, because I think the other 3 kind of stand alone as bad teams,
Okay. I'm not going to fight you on that. It's one other note here about the Colts is they get Matt Ryan. Then Carson Wentz goes to Washington, throwing 4 touchdowns in a game.
Hey, right.
Man.
Sometimes it's not always an upgrade, The
Colts might be cursed. They might be cursed at quarterback now. It's like some Andrew Luck weird curse happened, and Ryan Grigson, like his sins for not drafting offensive linemen is going to go punished even further into other regimes. I don't know what's going on with the Colts right now, but I expected a lot more. So I'm going to put the Colts 2 just because I still believe, and then probably the Raiders just because I like the pass rush. I like the weapons on offense, and the Titans. If Henry's not going to be a guy, then sorry, but
nothing left.
No. They've already lost Harold Landry on defense, right? So they're just limping already to start the season.
So, side question: if you had to re-pick the AFC South division winner, who would you pick right now?
I would take the Jaguars because I don't think they're that much less talented, and they just have a lead. So I'll take the extra game. I'll take the extra game lead they have and 2 games. Yeah, the extra game lead they have on some teams right now.
Yeah, that was my thoughts too. Is I think they maybe the most talented roster. I mean, just on paper, or not too far off.
And what they could be, like Trevor Lawrence will keep getting better. This is a new coach and some new weapons, and this team's still coming together. You could argue that they're going to be a lot better just from naturally progressing through the season than even you could project the Colts or the Titans or the Raiders to become.
Agreed, 100% agreed. So we're kind of in agreement that the Bengals stand alone. Whatever order you want to do, Colts, Titans, Raiders, they're the tier 2 of the Winless. I think we're all in agreement there. I'm really down on the Titans, though.
I am too. Yeah, I have it. I have it Colts, Raiders, Titans. You have it Raiders, Colts, Titans, right?
Yeah. Okay. Like if you look at EPA or anything like that for the Titans, they're the worst in the league for everything.
I think the team that I had some hope for that is disappointing me the most is the Carolina Panthers.
Me too.
And I don't know if I can put them behind the Falcons or the Texans, but the Panthers just look aimless. And, I know Mike McCarthy might, especially with the Dak injury, you're looking at the Vegas lines here that we'll talk about in a second for coaches. Mike McCarthy leapfrogged Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule after 2 weeks might have re-leapfrogged McCarthy. At least McCarthy
made a strong case
with a backup quarterback. And, I think the GM's got to go along with Matt Rule in Carolina too.
Yeah, I had them fifth. I had them ahead of the Falcons and Titans just because they have better players. But my trust factor is not high at all. And I feel foolish for saying things like, I could picture a world where the Panthers win 9, maybe even 10 games if they get a bounce and sneak in as a 7 seed in a bad NFC. They're so far from that right now. And Baker looks terrible.
To that listener question though earlier, and these teams have all been competitive in those 2 games at least. All 5 of the losses, because there was a tie with the Titans. Obviously, that was a close game. They've all been pretty close games. One score. They haven't been blown out either, so they've been competitive. Just roster wise, if you had to guess who is going to be, I think the Panthers still I would put ahead of those 2 teams, and probably Falcons then Texans. Maybe
that's what I did too.
Yeah.
This is a different question, but if we were doing power ranks to the listener question, I don't know who I'd put 32. There's not a team that's just been, whoa, they're so much worse than everybody else out there. I'm open to the fact that maybe it's the Bears, but I don't know.
Maybe the Texans, just because of the division they're in, have an opportunity to win more games than the Falcons. So if we're looking at it from that way, I would probably put the Texans maybe ahead of both the Panthers and the Falcons.
Maybe. Yeah. And just in terms of end of year, what it looks like on the scoreboard or on the record sheet, possibly. The wheels could totally fall off in Carolina. I don't think the wheels are going to fall off in Tennessee or Atlanta. I just think they're going to be plucky, feisty, whatever you want to call them, and lose a lot of games.
Speaking of the Atlanta Falcons, one thing that would absolutely help this team, they haven't used their best player yet this year, hardly, Matt. We have a question about Kyle Pitts. Is it time to get worried about him? What if he was utilized and had a touchdown in any of those games? They might have won if they're for the Atlanta Falcons. So maybe there is some more upside there for that Falcons team this year, being more than just plucky. And the rest of our mailbag questions on this Wednesday episode of Peacock and Williamson. BetOnline is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this season. A lot of line movement we've seen with some prop bets, some season-long bets at BetOnline due to the happenings in the first 2 weeks. Talked about how Mike McCarthy leapfrogged Matt Rule. Matt Rule might leapfrog Mike McCarthy again sometime soon for the first coach to get fired. How about this? The new leader in the clubhouse, Matt, for Coach of the Year, Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Tons of MVP changes. Josh Allen still the number one choice for MVP for bettors around the NFL. You can bet on not only the NFL, but tons of other sports, Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, golf, NBA is going to get going here, NHL. So go to BetOnline. It is your continued source for all your sports wagering and information this season, including live betting and esports and all your scores. So be informed when you make those bets. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's start with that question about the Atlanta Falcons young tight end Kyle Pitts. And I'm really interested to hear what you say about this, Matt, because I have the same question here because I have a lot of stock in Kyle Pitts in my fantasy league. The question is, at Williamson NFL, at BD Peacock, please tell me that Pitts will be fine, especially in fantasy. Can you help us out, Matt, with that?
Hopefully, because I am in that dilemma as well. I am heavily invested in Pitts. I think he's the freakiest receiver in the league. I, at this point, have no worries about the player. Is Pitts not what we thought he is? Oh, no, he's every bit of what we thought he is. I have no doubts about who he is. I think a little bit of it's bad luck, small sample, whatever you want to say. There's so much great information on numerous fantasy sites, and the ones I trust the most are all screaming, buy low, buy low. If you can get anything, go get them for 90 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar. And I'm in that category as well. But there is a little bit of a disturbing problem, and this goes back to last year. He's been in the league now 2 years, and so same with his coach in Atlanta, that he was at the top of the league in terms of tight ends percentage of reps versus corners. Now, you would think, he's 6'5" and 240. He should outmuscle those guys. Yeah, but they're lining him up outside the numbers and running wide receiver routes with him, and doing that against Jari Alexander is a lot harder than doing it against, Darius Leonard or who, even a good linebacker or a good safety. So I think they might need to re-examine how they use him, maybe get him in motion in the middle of the field a little bit more. And I also think, as you know, the league kind of works in quarters, like 4 games, especially when there are 16 games. And I bet maybe like in that second quarter of the season, teams will start looking at Drake London going, man, maybe we shouldn't roll coverage to Pitts quite as much, and London's killing us, and maybe things open up for Pitts. You know what I mean?
He's got 10 targets and only 4 receptions. So I think that's good news. He's still being targeted. He's the second most targeted receiver on the team behind rookie Drake London. He's got 19 targets and 13 catches. I think the problem is I'm a little bit more worried about Pitts than others maybe. And I think it's just because it's not a high volume passing game. And Marcus Mariota is not a high volume quarterback. I don't think Marcus Mariota is the type of guy who's going to wing it and let his guy go make plays on the football that you kind of need for a tight end. I think there's work that needs to be done on offense. And I think they haven't been behind enough in games to start throwing the ball a ton. So maybe Pitts will get there. And to be honest with you, and I like Marcus Mariota, but
sure,
I kind of want to see some Desmond Ridder late in the season. Let's chuck it from behind and just target the hell out of our star tight end, and maybe it'll turn around. But I am a little bit worried that he's not going to just have the volume to be that tight end one that I thought he was going to be this year. But I do think it will correct even some, just maybe not all the way.
Yeah, and I had him as my tight end one over Kelsey, over Andrews. Very unpopular, trust me. And I'm worried about that take. Don't get me wrong. And I think to your point, it's safe to say, can Atlanta offense really support 2 number 1 receivers? London's acting as a 1. I don't know that it can.
I would rather have, and this is the difference in having someone like Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, someone like Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen can make a star out of a number 2 receiver, whereas Atlanta, they might not be able to make a star out of their number 1 receiver, even if it was Pitts. And I still think in the end of the year, Pitts might even lead that team in targets because it's still pretty close, but a little bit worried there.
I hope he's not allergic to the end zone because I think he scored 1 touchdown his whole life.
I don't know how you can. He's the perfect red zone weapon,
Right.
Athleticism, length, hops.
Go give it to him. We'll see. But I'm a little worried, but I would be buying low on him for fantasy.
Let's go to this question about Tom Brady. How many of Tom Brady's quarterback contemporaries would have equaled or outperformed his career accomplishments if they magically replaced him as Patriots Bucks quarterback in every season that Brady played? So, cut it off for the equals are sort of like Matt Ryan, Tony Romo. I think, if you put Peyton Manning with Bill Belichick, they would have won a ton of Super Bowls. Would have they been in the exact same? Would have been more? That's so hard to say. But I think the more interesting question is this sort of cutoff he's talking about. What about other quarterbacks like Tony Romo, Matt Ryan? How many Super Bowls do they win? Does it look kind of close to what Tom Brady did? Or is it like maybe they get one?
I think the real answer is none. In terms of 6 rings, 9 appearances, the longevity. I know that's not what the question's framed around. Nobody's going to last that long. But I really think the answer is no one ever would have been as successful because this is, a 0.001% thing. But I've said for years, close your eyes and picture a world where Brady's a Packer and Rodgers is a Patriot. I think Rodgers' resume would be much stronger than it is now, which I think is potentially a top 5 guy ever already. He may have 4 rings, which ain't too shabby. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's a perfect way to say it. You can't say with confidence that anybody would equal what he did. But I think a lot of those guys would have done a lot more, especially guys like Rodgers and, maybe even Breeze. And they would have more than they do as far as the rings that they have. And I think the best argument for Brady is that he went to Tampa and then still won a Super Bowl, right? So it wasn't just Belichick. And so that's
100%. I know we're up against it, but Rodgers and Peyton are the only 2 I would even think are maybe could duplicate
Right.
it. Not Ben,
And
not Ryan, not Romo,
I'd buy the argument, but yeah, it's hard to say anybody could do what Brady did. A great question. Thanks for all the questions. Apologies to the ones we did not get to. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.